everybody, this is the Wikstrand and welcome to my sort of kind of recap of the year 2024 in movies. So, like 2023, this was a good year. But, like 2023, it was not, the big year for big Hollywood productions or the big blockbusters or the cape-wearing superheroes that was doing the, heavy lifting. It was these smaller, slightly more unexpected movies who were, becoming some of the, best movies of 2024. This is not going to be a, top 10 best movies of the year, because I personally need at least 30 months to, really dive into a movie year to make sure that the top 10 I present is the, most worked through list, because you need to rewatch movies, you need to find small hidden gems you didn't see, and for that you need 30 months. So at least in 2026 I can maybe think about creating a top 10 list for the year 2024, but I will at the end of this video go through the top 10 most anticipated movies that I had of 2024 and see if my predictions were correct or not. This was another year when we have a bunch of big, Hollywood blockbuster things that didn't quite live up to expectations, and we had, a couple of sequels that nobody really asked for, and we had, like was 2023 when, the superhero movies that was released was kind of dodgy, save for one shining examples of a really good one. This year was even worse, considering we had, Madam Web, and we had the Joker. We'll get to that when I do my, most anticipated movies of 2024. I haven't seen Kraven the Hunter yet, but I would be very, very sad if Kraven the Hunter was actually worse than Madam Web, because I think Madam Web is maybe the worst superhero movie I have seen for at least 10 years, I think. But when it came to the more smaller and more, old school movies, I love the movies such as Longlegs was fantastic. And the best movie that was released this year that I didn't know was going to be a thing was the movie The Substance, which is a movie that is equally icky and equally hilarious and equally glug. Your move, Cronenberg. We also had a bunch of really, really good Indian movies released this year. Amaran, Lucky Bhaskar, Captain Miller, and Fighter, especially Fighter, which is, the Indian answer to Top Gun Maverick, but it was even better. So we had a bunch of really, really great movies that were released this year, including the best movie that I have seen for 9 years. We will get to that when we get to that. M. Night Shyamalan, by the way, has been quite a busy boy this year, not only releasing one of the best movies he has done for quite a few years in the movie Trap, but he also made the psychological and very, very complex thriller Credo Lake, which, if it could have been starring a little bit, different and more, known and famous actors, it could have been an even better movie, but still, I love that movie. And I'm also happy to detect a little bit of a trend here, because it seems like the era of bad horror movies is finally over. We had 2 decades of horrible, worthless, supernatural horror movie bullshit. Instead, they have gone a little bit smarter, and they have been, been playing around a little bit with the concept, and they have presented a couple of really, really good horror movies this year, and I'm really hoping that we can get 2025 to be one of the best horror movie years of all time. We'll see where that takes us. But let's go to what I think is the most interesting thing. What were the 10 movies that I thought at the beginning of this year was going to be the 10 best movies of this year? So, what were they and how did they fare? Number 10, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Failure. Now, this movie was not bad. It was better than, the 2021 or was it 2020 Godzilla vs. Kong movie. But it had the same problem. It had boring human characters, and it didn't have any oomph when it came to, you know, the actual monster fights. But at least the monster fights were funny and entertaining. And the same thing happened to this movie. But if we can just get rid of these pesky humans, then we could probably go somewhere with this thing. And hopefully they will do something better with these characters in the future. And I mostly hope for that they will do another really good Godzilla movie. You know, like Godzilla -1, that they will do something similar, but maybe even better. We'll see where it goes. And I wasn't too upset with this new movie. It was entertaining enough, and it had a couple of fun sequences, and it was a visually stunning thing, but it was still kind of. But it was a movie that you didn't remember 2 weeks after seeing it. Number 9, Joker 2, Failure. Now, a friend of mine described this movie as this. Well, this is a type of a movie that, you know, would have a budget of $150,000, and it would have, you know, the support of a bunch of, you know, small independent studios, and it would travel around on these small little, you know, film festivals, and then it would get a limited release, and it would be seen by, you know, 150 people, and they would applaud it as, you know, a fantastic psychological dive into the mind of a sick and disturbed human being, and they would have great reviews, but nobody would watch it. This movie had a $200 million budget, and it was also seen by about 150 people, and everybody hated it, except for a few select people who thought that, well, you know, you're insane, this is a brilliant, you know, deconstruction of whatever they wanted to do. That may be so, but this was the sequel to Joker. This was essentially a sequel nobody really wanted to see deep down in their souls. It was the ending I thought that was pretty damn perfect. So what did they do for the sequel? They did a song and dance number filled courtroom drama that featured almost no action, and Joaquin Phoenix, despite being very good in this movie, the Joker was kind of irrelevant to the whole thing, and the movie ended in the most depressing, unimpressive, and kind of what the fuck was that for type of a ending to the damn thing. And I was sitting there thinking, is that it? Is that everything you have to come up with? I will say this, I am glad that they took, you know, risks with this one. I'm glad that they at least tried something new, but the song and dance numbers, they were so boring, and they just keep going and going and going, and every time they started singing, I was hoping that I could find a fast forward button or something like that, because the songs were dreary and boring, and Jesus Christ, the movie looked good, but the movie was going nowhere, and it continued to go nowhere. The only reason why I think that this movie is better than Madam Web is the mere fact that this movie at least tried something new and had good acting. Madam Web cannot say that it had that. Jesus Christ, Madam Web was terrible. This was also terrible. But Madam Web, oh boy. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Failure. Now, I love the first 3 Planet of the Apes movies with Andy Serkis as Caesar. And I thought that maybe we would have an interesting movie where we could get rid of these pesky humans. But as was the case with Godzilla Kong movie, this movie also had a pesky humans problem, because the human characters in this movie were so boring and so uninteresting. There weren't that many of them, but they were still too many, and they were still very, very boring. And the movie was very, very slow, but I liked the atmosphere that they had. And I love the fact that we had this mythology about Caesar, but the movie had problems getting anywhere. It did, however, ended on a kind of, ooh, I wonder where they're gonna go next, that helped up this movie ever so slightly. But I'm not too stoked for another sequel to this one, but it was at least a movie that had a style and it were going somewhere. It looked very impressive, but I guess we're going to have more human characters in the next one, and that fills me with some small amounts of dread, but I don't know. It was a pretty decent movie, but it failed really to connect with me. Gladiator 2, success. Now there is a couple of things that works against this movie, and that is mostly to do with the historical inaccuracies that they're having, and the sharks, and some of the casting choices. This Mescal guy that they're having to play the main character, he was so boring. I doubt that he could commandeer a bunch of children to sing happy birthday to another child on a birthday celebration, more so than when it comes to leading men in battles and stuff like that. And yet this was a really fun and fast-paced and gorgeous-looking Roman movie with a lot of cool action sequences, lots of visual spectacles. I, by the way, have to say that even though how ridiculous it was with the entire rhino sequence, I loved the rhino sequence. Maybe Denzel Washington was a little bit miscasted in his role, but he was still good. And Pedro Pascal was good, and Connie Nielsen was good, and Derek Jacobi. Is that guy, by the way, still alive somehow? How old is he? Jesus Christ, he looked old in the old ones, and that was almost a quarter of a century ago. I hope that we can get a third movie still out of this one, because I love Ridley Scott as a filmmaker, and I love the Roman Empire as a backdrop to creating big good dramas, because they actually had some pretty awesome palace intrigues and stuff going on besides the action in the arena. And despite Mescal not being a Russell Crowe, it was still a fun and spectacular movie, and way better than the sort of dud Napoleon that I never really liked that much. It was a misguided attempt. Some of it was really good, but this one was far better. Number 6, The Fall Guy, failure. This is one of these movies that I went out from the movie theater and I was, that was a pretty okay movie, I thought. And 2-3 weeks later, I could barely remember a single thing from it. It was just a very forgettable story, despite having, a fantastic look, a bunch of really cool and innovative action sequences, a bunch of charismatic leading characters, but there was something that was missing. It felt sterilized, it felt homogenized, it felt pasteurized, and the whole thing just didn't click for me for some reason. The cake did not rise, you could say. It's a bit of a shame. They had all the ingredients as they needed to make a compelling action comedy, but somehow it didn't work. I don't know. It's one of these movies where I want to like it, but somehow it doesn't work. Number 5, Alien, Romulus, success. Now this is how you do a sequel to Alien. You bring in what was the best things about the original movie, and you try to do it, but in a slightly different way. And you put your main characters through absolute hell and all the horrors you can think about. Maybe they took things a little bit too far at some points, and maybe the callbacks to other Alien movies was a little bit too much, and some of the things they did didn't quite work out as good as it could have had, but this was still an incredibly compelling, marvelously looking Alien movie. This makes me feel like if they're going to do more of these things with these characters or with some other characters, I am all for it. This was so much better than it had any right to be. I still, however, maintain that I think that they should have continued with the Prometheus story rather than this one, because the Prometheus ones, they could have done so much more. This is rehashing of old stuff from old movies. It's done marvelously good, and it is very compelling viewing. But still, they still have to compete with Alien. And it is a difficult movie to compete with. But it is a movie that I can say with some confidence is one of the best sequels that I've seen in, the last couple of years. So good on you, and hopefully we will have even better things to come. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Success. Guy Ritchie has done it again. He has both created a box office bomb, and he has also created a fantastic movie that I can watch over and over and over again and never get tired of it. One thing that we have been lacking for the past decades is a good war adventure. The type of fun, carefree, and entertaining war movie that combines adventure elements and espionages and stuff like that to create what I would consider one of the most incredibly awesome genres of all time. I love movies such as Kelly's Heroes and Escape to Athena, and of course one of the greatest movies of all time, Where Eagles Dare. Now, compared to the best movies in this illustrious genre, this movie cannot offer that much resistance, but I still maintain that this is one of the most entertaining war movies that I've seen for several decades. Not the best, but the most entertaining. Guy Ritchie is probably the most reliable movie maker over the past 5 years or so, and I hope that he will continue to make movies, but I also hope that they will start to become, profitable. Otherwise, Hollywood will probably say no more, movies for you, buddy boy. This, however, was fucking great. Number 3, Deadpool and Wolverine. Success. Okay, so when I, talked about that the year for superhero movies this year was very, very dodgy, except for one shining example of a really good one, this was it. This was so much better than Deadpool 2. It's not quite as good as the first Deadpool movie, who is, one of a kind when it comes to how incredibly awesome and entertaining it was. But it was a movie that played around a lot with the meta humor and the inside jokes, maybe too many meta jokes, and maybe a little bit too much of inside jokes. Oh, did you see that? Wasn't that a lot of fun? And this is also one of these cases where they, uses the multiverse to undo stuff that other movies have done. But I will give this movie a pass this time. I will never grant any movie ever that is going to be released under the Marvel umbrella the same courtesy. This one will get a pass. No other movies will ever do that. With that said, this was such entertaining nonsense fun. The characters were so compelling. Some of the jokes were so hilarious. Maybe they had a little bit too many of the people are doing serious and gruesome stuff while playing an uplifting pop song or something like that. But it was still so fun, and this is a movie I can watch over and over and over again and see different small little things that just makes me so happy. If you haven't seen it, go check it out because it's absolutely awesome. Number 2, Dune Part 2. Success. This is the best movie that I have seen in 9 years. I love the first movie. I thought it was a fantastic movie. This was even better. This was one of the greatest, absolutely most astonishing movies that I've ever seen. And this was such a mighty and incredibly visually spectacular movie that I can watch this over and over and over again. I can find new things all the time. I love, the Bene Gesserits working behind the scenes. I love the characters, and I love the way this movie ended and the way this movie looked, and the big battles and the more intimate moments and the mythology and all of these things. Now, I will say this. It was a long time ago that I read the novel, so I might be a little hazy in my memory of if this is an accurate adaptation or not, but this actually makes me not want to, read the books because it might damper my enthusiasm about this movie. So I'm just going to say that this was an adaptation that I liked, and whether it was a correct one or not, I still think that this movie is absolutely astonishing. I thought this movie was fantastic. I cannot think about more ways to tell you exactly how much I love this movie. This is my type of a movie. A big mythological and spectacular soap opera in space with fantastic characters, visual storytelling, fantastic music, fantastic acting, fantastic everything. There's just one scene that I kind of chuckled at when I saw it the first time, and that is the sequence in the beginning when Paul Atreides is trying to tell them that he's not the Messiah, and somebody says only, you know, the true Kwisatz Haderach would, you know, say that he isn't the Kwisatz Haderach or whatever they said. And I can only think about Life of Brian. I'm not the Messiah, I swear, honestly. Only the true Messiah would deny his divinity. Well, okay then, I am the Messiah. He is the Messiah. I can't watch that scene without cracking a smile. It's great, isn't it? Oh my god, that was great. Number 1, Furiosa. Okay. Now when I said that Dune Part 2 was the best movie I had seen for 9 years, you know, 9 years ago a movie was released called Mad Max Fury Road. And since then I have been walking around in circles, eagerly anticipated something new from the madman, and hopefully we would get something new. Maybe, you know, Mad Max the Wasteland that they were talking about, or maybe we'd have a sequel and have Charlize Theron, you know, his future adventures as Furiosa, but apparently that was not to be. Instead we got this prequel. Now I had to put this one as my, you know, most anticipated movie because how long I have been waiting for it and how good Mad Max Fury Road was. But deep down inside, maybe I knew that this was not going to be as good as Dune Part 2, but I was smoking the hopium and I was really, really hoping that this was going to be as good as Mad Max Fury Road. It wasn't. Was it bad? No, it wasn't. Was it too long? Yes, it was. Was the casting of Anna Taylor-Joy maybe not the best version that they could have done? Possibly. But this was still one of the most gorgeous movies I have ever seen. Some of the action sequences was fantastic. And yet, I kept sitting there and thinking, something about this isn't quite right. You see, one problem I have with prequels is the fact that if we have characters that will appear in the next movie, we know what's going to happen to these characters. Oh, Immortan Joe is here. Well, we know he's definitely going to survive. Well, this guy is here. Then we know he's definitely going to survive. I wonder if Furiosa is going to survive this movie or not. So that put a little bit of a damper on the movie. And they also kind of made Immortan Joe into more of a sympathetic character, which, you know, undermined him a little bit in the movie Mad Max Fury Road. Good work there, guys. But I think that my biggest problem to this movie was the ending. It was a little bit, is that it? The biggest and most awesome action sequence is in the middle of the movie. Then we have the desert war, which we barely get to see anything of. I was thinking, why did we have the desert war as the ending to this movie? But we have this boring, kind of uninteresting final showdown between our two main characters. Chris Hemsworth was very good in this movie, by the way, playing against, you know, the usual type of character he plays. That was a great load of fun, but they also kind of diminished him as the main villain also kind of in the end. So it wasn't as good as it could have been. The movie looks fantastic, the movie looks great, but at the same time, it kind of ends on this sort of, how do I describe it? A not very uplifting note, because it just ends kind of sort of where Mad Max Fury Road begins. But the saddest part of Furiosa is the fact that because of its poor box office performance, Wasteland will never see the day of light, because they basically said, if this movie is successful, we will have Mad Max Wasteland. If this movie does not live up to expectations, Mad Max Wasteland will pretty much be dead in the water. And because this is one of the biggest bombs of the year, sorry, no more Mad Max for you. It's a very, very sad day. I saw this movie in the theaters, I did what I could to support it, but unfortunately, we will not get any further installments in this franchise, which makes me very sad. It's not a bad movie at all. It's actually very, very, very good. The action sequences are fantastic, the acting is very good, the visual storytelling is amazing, and this is a journey, because the movie is arguably a little bit too long at 2.5 hours. They could have shaved off a good 15-20 minutes and we probably wouldn't have noticed it. But it is a journey that we will go through, and it is very, very, very good as a viewing experience. But I would much rather watch Mad Max Fury Road or The Road Warrior rather than this one again. I can watch those movies over and over and over again. I will probably just, rewatch these movies 1 time, maybe 2 times, just to reaffirm to myself that, yeah, this movie was really, really good. But compared to the really good ones, it's a little bit lower down the card. It's a bit of a shame because it is fantastic filmmaking. There are just these small little things that keeps nagging on me. Do I think that people should see this movie? Oh yes, most definitely, but I can understand why some people didn't like it. And I can absolutely understand why some people thought it was one of the best movies of the year. I thought that it was a fantastic movie that should have been a modern masterpiece, but it wasn't. If my expectations would have been a little bit lower, would I think that it would have been a better movie? Possibly. But my expectations were just so high that it probably was unable to, reach it whatever it did. But it's not hard to see where the stumbling blocks for this movie was. But it was a fascinating viewing for sure. Well, so I'll see you in 2025 for more shenanigans. And I'll see you next time from Well So and So, we're reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year!